Some moments brand themselves into your memory so sharply that you can feel the sting years later. For me, it was at my only son's wedding reception. My new daughter-in-law, Jessica, gripped my arm a little too tight as she dragged me toward her boss, Mr. Thompson. In her sweetest voice, the one she reserved for manipulation, she introduced me as Dorothy, my new mother-in-law. She's between jobs. The pause before those words stretched like smoke, and then came the knife. Actually, she's been unemployed for quite a while. Bit of a loser, really. She smiled as if she had just delivered the punchline to a joke. What Jessica didn't realize was that this moment wouldn't break me. It would awaken me. To understand how I got there, standing in that ballroom in my best dress while being humiliated, you need to know the months leading up to it. When my son Michael first told me he was marrying Jessica Parker, I swallowed my doubts. They had met at a corporate event where she worked for Thompson and Associates, a mid-level marketing firm. Jessica never missed a chance to broadcast her career successes. Corner office, and all even answering work calls right at family dinners with a smug, "Sorry, can't miss an opportunity." It was clear from the start she craved recognition. The wedding planning only deepened my unease. Jessica wanted control over everything: the flowers, the music, the guest list. Most of all, she wanted me invisible. I overheard her once tell Michael, "It would be better if Dorothy kept a low profile. She doesn't really understand professional networking." I bit my tongue. After all, my son was in love, and seeing him glow when he looked at her meant more than winning a petty argument. Still, the condescension was hard to ignore. By the time the wedding day arrived, I had resigned myself to keeping peace. But Jessica couldn't resist seizing her moment. As Mr. Thompson's eyebrows lifted in surprise at her introduction, she looked smug, convinced she had successfully cast me as the family embarrassment. What she didn't know was that I had spent decades in boardrooms facing men like him. I knew how to hold my ground. So instead of shrinking away, I smiled and asked him about the challenges in his industry. His expression softened instantly as he launched into a discussion about competition, and I gently steered the conversation like a seasoned professional. Jessica stood frozen, confused at how her loser mother-in-law was keeping pace with her boss. Later that evening, I stepped outside for air and overheard Jessica on the phone. She was bragging to her mother about how she had diminished me in front of Mr. Thompson. Then she called her sister, retelling the story in greater detail, painting me as pathetic, unemployed, and irrelevant. The third call was to someone she called Babe, which was unsettling, considering she had just married my son that morning. I stood in the shadows, listening not only to her words, but to the truth they revealed. She wasn't careless. She was calculating, using humiliation as her sport. It struck me then that I had been playing a role for months, the accommodating mother-in-law careful not to rock the boat. But roles only work when everyone agrees to believe the script. Jessica had broken that agreement, and in doing so, she reminded me of something I had almost forgotten who I really was. The Monday after the wedding, I sat in my home office with a cup of coffee and a legal pad of notes. Jessica had made one fatal error. She underestimated me. She assumed I was exactly as I appeared, a quiet woman, past her prime, with no professional influence left. What she never cared to discover was that I was Dorothy Walsh, CEO of Walsh Enterprises, a private but powerful company she and her boss had been trying to land as a client for over a year. I picked up the phone and called my longtime assistant. "Patricia, it's Dorothy. I need you to set up a confidential meeting with the Thompson account team this week and make sure Jessica is present." Patricia didn't ask questions. She'd worked with me for 12 years and knew that tone meant one thing: someone was about to have a very bad day. By Tuesday afternoon, my research was complete. Jessica's professional record was competent, but not extraordinary. What stood out were her questionable choices. Expense reports that blurred the line between personal indulgence and business necessity, inflated job titles on LinkedIn and vacation photos disguised as client trips. It wasn't enough for criminal charges, but it was enough to raise serious doubts about her integrity. I leaned back in my chair, almost amused. Jessica thought she'd been playing power games at a wedding reception. She had no idea she had wandered into a battlefield I'd been navigating for 3 decades. As I prepared for the Thursday meeting with Thompson and Associates, I chose my armor carefully. A navy power suit, pearls from my late husband, and the quiet confidence of a woman who had nothing to prove but everything to protect. The Thompson and Associates office gleamed with glass walls and polished chrome, the kind of place designed to impress clients while reminding employees how replaceable they were. Motivational posters about teamwork and synergy decorated the corridors. I took it all in calmly as the receptionist, a young man with nervous hands, announced my arrival with reverence. Ms. Walsh is here for her appointment with Mr. Thompson. From my seat in the waiting area, I could see the bullpen. There she was, Jessica typing furiously at her desk in a striking red blazer, her hair pulled back in a style that screamed effort. She hadn't noticed me yet, which was perfect. I wanted her first sight of me to come as a shock. At exactly 2:00 p.m., Mr. Thompson appeared accompanied by 2 executives. Bringing up the rear was Jessica, and when her eyes found mine, her face drained of color. She froze in the doorway like she had seen a ghost. Mrs. Walsh. Mr. Thompson greeted warmly, extending his hand. Thank you so much for coming in. We were very excited when your assistant reached out about Walsh Enterprises. Jessica's lips parted, but no sound came. I returned his handshake with practiced grace. The pleasure is mine, though it's Ms. Walsh, actually. And before we begin, there's a matter we should discuss about one of your employees. The silence in the conference room grew heavy. Jessica's complexion shifted from pale to green, her hands twisting in her lap. Mr. Thompson looked bewildered. I'm sorry, but I think there's been some confusion. This is Jessica Walsh, one of our account managers. She just got married this past weekend. Yes, I replied smoothly. Jessica is my new daughter-in-law, and I'm Dorothy Walsh, CEO of Walsh Enterprises. The same Walsh Enterprises your company has been pursuing for 18 months. The revelation landed like a thunderclap. Jessica let out a faint gasp. The 2 other executives sat rigid, their eyes darting between me and the young woman squirming in her chair. Mr. Thompson blinked rapidly, his face a portrait of dawning dread. But at the wedding, he stammered. Jessica said you were unemployed. She called you a loser, I finished gently. Yes. She was very descriptive. I opened the folder I had brought, spreading its contents across the mahogany table with deliberate care. Expense reports, receipts, social media, screenshots, performance reviews, all meticulously organized. Which brings me to why I'm here. Perhaps we should examine Jessica's professional conduct before discussing business. Jessica's voice trembled. Dorothy, I can explain. It was just wedding nerves. I didn't mean, oh, but you did mean it, I said evenly. So much so that you called your mother afterward to brag. Then your sister. And someone you called Babe. Her eyes widened in panic. Mr. Thompson looked stricken. His gaze darted to the papers in front of him, where examples of Jessica's expense creativity lay exposed. I tapped one report. Here. A dinner she claimed as a client meeting. Reservation records show it was her birthday party with 8 friends. Or this, Miami hotel stay, billed as a business conference, yet her Instagram that weekend featured bikini shots by the pool. No seminars in sight. One of the executives, a sharp-eyed woman in her 40s, leaned forward. Are you saying Jessica has been falsifying company expenses? I'm not saying anything, I replied calmly. I'm simply presenting facts. You may draw your own conclusions. Jessica's chair scraped as she shot to her feet. This is ridiculous. You can't do this to me because of some silly misunderstanding at a wedding. I studied her, as one might study something unpleasant on a shoe. A silly misunderstanding. Jessica, you tried to humiliate me in front of your colleagues. You've exaggerated your role, padded your reports, and made calls to a man your husband knows nothing about, all on your wedding night. The room went still. Mr. Thompson swallowed hard sweat visible at his temple. I closed the folder with a soft snap. Now regarding Walsh Enterprises. We are seeking a marketing partner for our expansion into the southeastern markets. The contract is worth approximately $12 million over 3 years. The number dropped like a stone into the silence. Mr. Thompson's mouth opened slightly. $12 million was likely more than Thompson and Associates earned in a year. Of course, I continued, my voice light but firm. Our company requires partners with impeccable ethics. We've learned the hard way that questionable internal practices usually bleed into client relationships. Unfortunately, we cannot work with organizations that don't share our values. Jessica's face crumpled. You can't, she started, but her voice cracked. I stood gathering my documents with unhurried precision. Mr. Thompson, I trust you'll take appropriate steps with your staff. I'll be in touch next week to discuss whether Walsh Enterprises will proceed. At the door, I glanced back. Oh, Jessica, do update your LinkedIn profile. I suspect your job description will soon be more accurate. The door clicked shut behind me, leaving silence in my wake. That evening, as I sipped wine on my back patio, my phone buzzed. Michael's name flashed on the screen. I sighed, knowing exactly what this call would be. Mom. His voice burst out thick with panic. What the hell did you do? Jessica came home in tears. She says you got her fired? I watched a cardinal flutter onto the bird feeder. Hello, darling. How was your first day back from the honeymoon? Don't darling me. Did you ambush her? Show up pretending to be CEO of some company? Not pretending. I corrected softly. Walsh Enterprises isn't some company. It's the company I've been running for the last 15 years. The one that put you through school, bought your first car, your first home. The company your wife never bothered to ask about. There was a long silence on the line. Then his voice small, almost broken. You're the CEO of Walsh Enterprises. Yes, Michael, since your father passed. I kept the name to honor him. He whispered. She told me what she said at the wedding. She feels awful. Mom, please, she made a mistake. She's my wife. Isn't there some way to fix this? I swirled the wine in my glass, watching the crimson liquid catch the fading sunlight. A mistake is spilling red wine on a white dress, Michael. A mistake is forgetting to lock the front door. What Jessica did was deliberate. She tried to belittle me, erase me in front of the people you both should have respected. That's not a mistake, that's character. He exhaled shakily. But people can change. Yes, they can, I said. But only when they're forced to face consequences. Tell me, has Jessica ever once admitted she was wrong to you? Or does she cry until you comfort her? Until you forget the reason she was crying in the first place? The silence stretched. He didn't answer, and that was answer enough. Michael, you're my son, and I love you, I continued gently. But I won't protect you from the truth. Jessica humiliated me at her wedding, called me useless, then turned around and lied to her boss, her colleagues, and you. If she can't respect me, the mother who raised you, what makes you think she'll respect your marriage vows? His voice cracked. So what do I do? Mom? Divorce her. Walk away after a week. I closed my eyes. I could almost see him pacing the kitchen, his hair a mess, his hands tugging at the back of his neck like he used to when he was overwhelmed as a boy. No, I said softly. Not yet. But don't rush to save her from the fallout. Let her stand in it. Let her show you whether she chooses accountability or more excuses. That's how you'll know who you really married. He sniffed the sound of someone fighting tears. You always make things sound so simple. It's not simple, darling. It's painful. But clarity often is. We said our goodbyes quietly and I hung up. The evening breeze carried the faint scent of jasmine. I leaned back in my chair and let it wash over me. For the first time since the wedding, I felt something resembling peace. The following morning, my assistant Claire entered my office with her usual efficiency. You'll want to see this, she said, laying a folded newspaper on my desk. There it was on the business page. Thompson and Associates faces internal audit after whistleblower allegations. My lips curved into the small smile. The article didn't name me, of course, but it didn't need to. It detailed the sudden suspension of an employee accused of falsifying expense reports, the firm's urgent hiring of auditors, and whispers of shaken client confidence. Claire raised an eyebrow. Quite the coincidence, don't you think? Life is full of coincidences, I said, sliding the paper aside. By noon, I had 3 voicemails from Mr. Thompson, all variations of desperate apologies and promises of corrective action. I ignored them. What caught my attention instead was a text from Michael. She finally admitted it, about the expenses, the lies. She says she only did it because she wanted to prove she was good enough for me. I don't know if that's true, or just another excuse. But you were right. Thank you, Mom. I let the phone rest on the desk. A bittersweet ache tugged at my chest. Michael's journey wasn't over. He'd have to decide for himself whether love built on deceit could ever survive. As for me, I had decisions of my own. Thompson and Associates was finished, at least in my eyes. But there were 3 other firms vying for Walsh Enterprises' contract, each of them with reputations worth examining. I pressed the intercom. Claire set up meetings with the other firms. And cancel lunch. I'm in the mood for a long afternoon of reading proposals. She chuckled softly. Understood. As the line clicked off, I allowed myself one final thought about Jessica. She had wanted so badly to make me small. But in her attempt, she had revealed just how little she was herself. And I, Dorothy Walsh, had no intention of ever shrinking again. The church bells tolled faintly in the distance, as I adjusted the lapel of my navy suit. I wasn't here for a wedding this time, far from it. Today it was the courthouse, my son's divorce hearing. Michael stood beside me, shoulders squared, jaw set. He looked older, wearier, but also stronger somehow. Pain has a way of chiseling people into sharper versions of themselves. Jessica arrived last, flanked by her lawyer. Her once perfect hair was dulled, her clothes less polished. She avoided my gaze, though I could feel the tremor in her steps when she passed. Inside the courtroom, words like irreconcilable differences and financial misconduct echoed. Jessica tried to cast herself as the victim, choking out half-hearted apologies and crocodile tears. But when the judge produced documentation of her falsified reports, her secret bank account, and evidence of her ongoing affair, the performance crumbled. Michael didn't gloat. He didn't yell. He simply signed the papers when it was time. His silence was louder than anything Jessica could have said. Afterward, on the courthouse steps, he turned to me. His eyes glistened, but his voice was steady. You saved me, Mom. Not just from her, but from myself. If you hadn't exposed the truth, I'd still be living a lie. I squeezed his hand. You saved yourself, Michael. You just needed a little light to see the shadows. Life moved on quickly after that. Jessica disappeared from our orbit whispers, suggesting she'd left the city altogether. Thompson and Associates, despite frantic efforts to rebuild, never regained its former reputation. Walsh Enterprises signed with a different firm, one that valued integrity as much as results. As for me, I found a new rhythm. My evenings were quieter, my company stronger, my heart lighter. I'd stopped questioning whether I had been too harsh. I understood now protecting my dignity wasn't cruelty. It was survival. Sometimes I still thought about Jessica, not with anger anymore, but with clarity. She had tried to define me by her narrow vision of success. But the truth was, simple people who need to belittle others are only exposing their own smallness. And me, I was never small. I was Dorothy Walsh, widow, mother, CEO, survivor. And I had finally remembered who I was all along. Thank you for listening. If the story moved, you don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more. And I'd love to hear your thoughts. Have you ever had to rebuild yourself after betrayal? Share your story in the comments. Your voice matters.